Hello, everyone. I am Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and this is the Mad Science Lab podcast. We are continuing on with the Studs and Duds series, and here to help me out today is fellow league winner, content director, I guess. You're in charge of the dynasty aspect. I'm in charge of redraft. We have Pru Patel. Pru, thank you for joining me. It's great to have you.
Hey, Aaron, thanks for having me. It's glad to connect.
I kind of spoiled your intro, but you want to tell everyone where they can find you in case they didn't just hear me?
Sure. Like Aaron said, I also help write at the League Winners. I sort of help lead the dynasty side of it. But I know we tag team a lot with Aaron, Jeremy, and myself. You can also follow FF Squared. That's our podcast with another fellow league winner where we kind of do a fantasy football episode and then future finance episode as well, where we try to marry the two topics. Yep.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks for joining me. We will get into your first player. You have Terry McLaurin, Washington wide receiver, as your stud. Finished as wide receiver 14 last year. 1,191 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, 223 full PPR points. Good for 13.47 per game. Fantasy Pros current ADP is 50 overall. He sits at 52.5 on NFFC as wide receiver 24. Go ahead and tell me why he is a stud for you.
Um, in one word, he's consistent, right? He's giving you wide receiver two numbers every season, and that's with abysmal quarterback play. Um, and to me in fantasy football, I think we tend to forget sometimes that we're playing a weekly game, and your wide receiver two, in my opinion, shouldn't be a boom or bust player. They should be your consistent player that teams up well with your wide receiver one. And
Yeah.
McLaren is perfect in that regard. He is consistent as they come, regardless of the quarterback. And I think with the offensive coordinator change there as the season goes on, and along with Dotson fully healthy, I think that's just going to benefit Terry a lot more. And he's going to start seeing, you know, single coverages, a lot less attention, and they're going to scheme him open. And I think you could see him cripping into, low end wide receiver one numbers this year.
That consistency, I think, is why you see him fall. He finishes anywhere between a mid-range wide receiver 2 and a low-end wide receiver 2. But you get, especially this time of year when it's a lot of dynasty managers, they're all obsessed with the high upside young plays, and the boring guy who's just going to be 13 and a half points per game, as the chart said. 13 and a half points, it's kind of boring. There's not really, he gets the occasional 20-point game, but there's no real 40-point explosions. It's just a consistent guy, and you're right. That's kind of why he falls. It's just he's consistent, so people get bored with it. He is the perfect receiver I would want for my wide receiver too. If I have if my wide receiver one is AJ Brown, who is about the most notorious boomer bust wide receiver one I've ever had to deal with in my lineups. And I've actually had these as my wide receiver 1 and 2 before. If AJ Brown's my 1, Terry McLaurin is my 2, because I know if AJ Brown falls on his face or gets hurt that week, Terry's just going to put up a normal number. He's just going to be there, and he's going to save my week for me and at least keep me in it. So that is definitely why I think he falls. I'll bring him up here in the ADP. He is going down. Where the hell was he? Yep, 52 overall. He's in a range. I always say this is a weird range. It falls off after DK at 15. You go from all the elite, reliable receivers to kind of an abyss of who the heck knows with any of these guys. I think I've said this before on different receiver breakdowns. I like to avoid Debo. I love to avoid Ridley. Aside from that, every receiver in the 60 to 30, 16 to 32 range for me, they're all kind of guys where if they fall, I'll take them. I'm not actively targeting them, not actively avoiding them. I'm kind of getting a little bit of each. But like I said, I avoid Ridley, I avoid Debo. I primarily target Lockett, Deontay, and Ayuk, but these guys in between here, this middle range from Amari Cooper down to Mike Williams, kind of have a mixed bag of them. They all have some upside, they all have some downside. Not really higher on any of them or lower. Well, what do you think of the guys in this range here?
Right. I think exactly what you're saying. Right. I'm having a mixed bag of each of those players, um, but I think McLaren is the one that's been the zone that he's got talent and consistency, whereas some of those have some question marks.
Yeah,
But I do like Deontay Johnson in that range as well a
yeah,
lot, who had a bad touchdown regression last year.
yeah. I find myself in a lot taking two of these guys from 16 to 32. I'll take whoever my favorite is, and then normally two or three of the guys in this range fall. I've seen for some reason Watson seems to go the earliest. Watson, Ridley, and Debo are going the earliest, and then I take whoever falls out of here. Judy seems to go early, even DJ Moore. I have some McLaurin. I have some McLaurin, and then, like I said, Lockett, Deontay, Ayuk, mix in some Amari Cooper. So I think it's a good range where if you didn't start wide receiver, you can double tap it here. There's some good options. Like I said, it's nothing. It's more the consistent, decent floor options here. There are no real league winning game breakers in the range. So it's kind of the spot to get your safe wide receiver too. Who would you like to talk about next?
Let's keep it on with the studs and talk with about Stevenson.
All right, one sec. Let's bring that up. I had it minimized on my other screen and couldn't find it for a sec. We have New England running back Ramondre Stevenson, finished as RB7 last year, 1,040 rushing yards, 421 through the air, 6 touchdowns, 241.6 points in full PPR, good for 14.65 per game. Fantasy Pros has him as 25th overall. I will bring up the running backs here. NFFC has him 30th overall, almost 31st. RB11. What is it you like about Ramondre?
With Ramondre, if you watched any of the Patriots games last year, you quickly saw when he was the focal point of the game and the game script didn't run away from them, they were the most effective when he was the focal point. And it's not like they brought in, an alpha wide receiver or another running back to compete. And if New England Patriots want to, win in 2023 with Mac Jones as quarterback, they're going to lean on Stevenson. And now with Damian Harris going, who takes over 100 carries with him to Buffalo, um, Stevenson is just gonna, take those opportunities and hog them. He may be playing in a very low efficient offense, but I think his volume is going to be king. And you could see him, push for the overall RB1 just based on volume alone. Um, and I think those 6 touchdowns is a regression. I think those are, you could look at double-digit touchdowns this year, especially since he was heavily used in short yardage downs and touchdown range.
Yeah, see, I was high on Stevenson last year. I was the Stevenson guy. I'm a little more out this year. His price is skyrocketed. I don't trust a Bill Belichick running back room. It just scares the hell out of me. I get that the guys behind him, Kevin Harris, Pierre Strong, Ty Montgomery, are not great. I didn't mind Harris or Strong in college. They just, everything they say makes it look like they're trying to bring someone in for the third down work. They were scouting pass catching running backs at the Senior Bowl. This one just scares me, and I feel like we might be drafting him over his ceiling. Like, I don't hate him as RB, what is he, 25 overall, RB 11. I feel like he probably finishes somewhere between 8 and 15 or 8 and 12. I just feel like drafting Ramondre there at 30 overall on NFC, I feel like there's not much room to turn a profit, and that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I think the fan base is catching on as we get closer and closer to draft, especially with people seeing that he has no competition. And you bring up a fair point, right? Bill Belichick is notorious with his running backs by committee, but as as far as I can see, is when you watch film with the Patriots playing, they're a lot more effective when he's the focal point. And even if it's a two down back, he's getting the high value opportunities, uh, catching the ball or whatnot.
Yeah. I don't hate the player. I don't love the ADP. The reason I don't have any shares of him, I don't have any shares of Chubb, Najee, Stevenson, Pollard, Hall, ETN. Because if you look in this range, I brought that up, right? Yep. Okay. If you look at this range on the screen here, at the end of, or in the middle, what's that, middle of the third round there, I'm typically transferring to my run on receivers. I'm loading up here. Give me T, Olave, Devontae Smith. Even sometimes, like if Burrow's still available, I grab Burrow. I find I don't have any of these running backs in this range because I'm not looking for a running back in this range. I typically have an anchor or a hero or whatever you want to call it, hero RB. I've grabbed one in the first 2 rounds. And then from there, I'm just kind of pounding away at wide receiver. So I think that's why I don't have any Najee for me. But like I said, it's more build specific than it really is, anything regarding the player's talent.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I'm the opposite. I mean, if we're talking dynasty builds, I'm always trading out of
Oh,
a lot, and I'm like,
Dynasty's different. Yeah, Dynasty, I
right,
hit some wide receivers early, but for redraft purposes, I typically I don't hammer wide receiver as early. I still hammer it, but like I like to have my anchor running back in
makes sense.
a redraft league.
Yep.
All right, moving on. We have our first dud, someone in the same range that I was a big fan of last year, not a big fan of this year. Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman was wide receiver 20 last year, 925 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, 190.5 points in full PPR, 13.53 per game, Fantasy Pros ADP of 61 overall. He is, I'm going to have to scroll down a bit. On NFFC, he is 55, we'll call it. Yeah, 55 overall. That's kind of scary. I'll have to look and see where he is specific to wide receivers. 55 overall, wide receiver 26. So he's a little bit higher on NFC, and I was a little bit out at 61, let alone 55. Why don't you like him?
It's same case. Well, as you, right? I loved him last year. This year I'm out on him. Love the talent. I think he gains value maybe next year, but it's the rookie quarterback. It's a rookie
Yeah.
rushing quarterback. If you slice it, if you slice it in terms of rookie quarterbacks and their impact to wide receivers, or if you slice it from a rushing quarterback, their impact to wide receiver, the percentages are so low for him to return wide receiver 2 numbers or better. And he's going at right around the end of wide receiver 2 and early wide receiver 3, but I'm just not comfortable, especially with in redraft, because in redraft if you have him the first 6 weeks it's going to be rough, um,
Yeah.
and if you start losing because of his duds, you're going to have a lot of catching on to do to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't even have to look at the ADP here to tell you why I don't like him. Last year, we went into it, statue of a quarterback, nobody at wide receiver to challenge him. Jelani Woods did nothing at tight end. Jonathan Taylor was injured most of the season. This year, we have hopefully healthy Jonathan Taylor. I get the receivers aren't to die for. We have Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, still more of a threat than he had last year. Jelani Woods should see some more work. And more importantly, we go from statue quarterback to probably one of the top rushing quarterbacks in the league. Rookie quarterback, terrible passer. There's no way. There's no way. Wide receiver 20 last year, ADP 61st overall. I can't see taking him. I'm just completely out on him. So, like I said, it's not even the range for me. This is one where it's not the value, it's the player. I just don't like the situation. Sure, he falls to the 10th round. I'm going to take him as my wide receiver 4, but he's being drafted in the range we've talked about already, in the wide receiver 2 range. Give me Terry McLaurin all day long. Give me, I don't know, Deontay, Ayuk, Lockett. I'm out on him. So that was a pretty easy case, I think. So we can transition to your final bust or dud. We have Tennessee running back Derrick Henry. Finished as RB4 last year, 1,538 rushing yards, 398 through the air, 13 touchdowns, 323.26 full PPR points, good for 18.86 per game. ADP is 20 overall on Fantasy Pros. On NFC, he currently sits at 23 overall, RB8. Why are you out on King Henry?
All right, so this one's the most likely case where it's going to backfire on me. I love Derrick Henry. I mean, he showed us again last year that why he's the king is defying age, but it's father time, right? Number Fires did an amazing article back in 2015 that showed the impact of rushing efficiency, and they found that at the 1,800 carry mark, a lot of the running backs were losing significant rushing efficiency. And King Henry kind of sits right there. He's got 1,750 rushing attempts heading into the season, right? So I obviously, if there was one player to, be the outlier to this case, it's King Henry. He is an amazing football player, an athlete, and his size is not paralleled on this earth. But again, as Matthew Berry always said in his articles, what is the likely scenario? And the likely scenario is it's going to hold true that at around 1,800 carries, his efficiencies are going to start dropping. And that's what scares me. And I don't think he finishes in the top 5 running backs. I think and the other fact is, I think, Mike Rabel is sort of on the hotline. And if the offense sputters, I think they hand the keys to Will Levis. And again, now you have a rookie quarterback that's killing your drives with interceptions and incomplete third down passes, giving him, King Henry, less opportunities to score, and etc.
See, I'm torn on him. I don't like the offense. Whether it's Tannehill or Levis, it could be rough. There aren't really any other weapons, which means they might have to rely on him. Basically, I think there's 2 arguments you could make of why I do have some shares of him. He's going, according to NFFC, at 23 RB8. I have no shares of him at that price at the end of the second round. The shares I do have of him, he's slipped to the 4th, 5th, and even 6th round. That's when I say, screw it, I'll take a chance. And that's when I use the argument of maybe he's one of those guys like Kelsey, McCaffrey, Brady, where we just say, screw it, I don't care how old he is. I'm just going to have this guy die on my roster, and I'm just going to keep drafting him, and I'm going to keep riding him until the wheels fall off. But like I said, that's at a deep discount for me. So I do have some shares. I even have him on a few dynasty teams that I've drafted in startups this offseason, but he's gone probably 5th or 6th round for me, where I just kind of looked and I said, hey, you know what? This is a win now team, which if you're doing any dynasty startups right now, we're in the heart of dynasty season here, and a lot of the degenerates are all about the youth. It is never easier to draft a win now team than it is right now. I have rosters. You should see some of them. I had one from the 101. I drafted Mahomes. My team ended up with something like Mahomes, Kelsey, McCaffrey, Cup, Diggs, Henry, Cook, Kamara, like it looked like a Hall of Fame. I get it. I have to win the championship this year or next. But yeah, even that, like I know the value of the youth, but half those players, if I get to week 8 and my team doesn't look like a contender, I can sell them for picks and younger players. So it's not like that, maybe one of them actually dies on my roster. Like maybe I draft Kamara, he doesn't play this season and then he just gets cut. But I just, some of the Henry's one of the guys where I like taking a shot if he falls. But you're right. At his current price, the end of the second round, RB8, I don't think I want anything to do with them. I would personally rather take Jacobs, whose pick ADP is 2 picks higher. Chubb, I don't mind. I'm not a Pollard guy. I'm not a Stevenson guy. I don't mind Najee. This is another spot where this is where I'm transitioning to receiver right now. I don't really, this range of Chubb, Henry, Pollard, Harris, Stevenson, like I said, this is not my running back range. So I can agree with you, though. I don't hate hating on King Henry, despite the fact that he will undoubtedly prove everyone wrong one more time. So, all right, Pru, well, thank you very much for joining me. It was great chatting with you. You want to tell everyone again where they can find you?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at the Pru Patel. I also write for the league winners here, like Aaron, and I have a podcast called FF Squared, where we do one episode on fantasy football and another episode on future finances.
Oh, change that title. Author for the league winners. Change that shit. Redraft director of content is what it should say. I changed mine the second Tom told me. I'm like, just so you know, I'm putting Dynasty director of content in my bio. He's like, okay, that's fine. Give me the damn title. I don't even know. We're not even doing anything, but. Oh, so you're Dynasty. I got it backwards. I said redraft for you. I meant Dynasty for you, redraft for me. Which is funny because I've been helping you guys out with some Dynasty stuff because nobody doing redraft stuff right now in league winners. I tried to get something out for Hopkins and it's crickets.
Right, I know. I think it'll flip when we get close to the season, and we'll be helping you with the redraft.
Well, when August gets here, I'm sure it'll be like that. So, well, thank you for joining me. This was Studs and Duds with Pru Patel. Once again, I am Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and this has been the Mad Science Lab podcast. Thank you again to Pru for joining me, and thank you everyone for watching. Have a great night. Take care.